the Better Together Summit. Today, we are talking about what couples really mean when they say we can't communicate. So, I'm excited to have this conversation with our communications expert, Miss Wheeler. Miss Wheeler, can you share with the people who you are and what you do in the world?
Yes. Again, I'm very excited about what we're going to be talking about here. Couples are going to get so much value. My name is Kenyatta. I am the communication specialist over at Atlanta Couple Therapy. I work with tons of couples every day to support them with fixing their communication in their relationship so they can truly get the relationship that they're looking for.
I love it. I love it. So, what do you think are some of the challenges that get in the way of like couples communicating?
Yes. So, I mean, it's a couple things that get into the way, but I will give you my top three things that I think couples really mean when they say they can't communicate, right? So, some of the pitfalls are this: childhood trauma, things from the past, growing up, previous relationships definitely contribute to the communication style that we have when we're adults, right? Our relationship with our family, with our siblings, with our caregivers are some of our very first relationships. And so we learn a lot in those years, right? So that's one thing. Another thing that I would say that couples really mean when they say we can't communicate is they may have poor listening skills or never really learn how to listen to one another. And so that back and forth, that send a message, receive a message is absolutely not happening, unfortunately. And then the
Ooh, send
thing
a message, receive a message. That's good.
that's what
What's the third?
supposed to be. Absolutely. The third one is unresolved resentment. Now, these are my couples who need like absolute CPR. Like they are struggling in their relationship. They are on their last leg. They've gotten to the place where resentment and bitterness and mistrust has built up so much that communication is almost impossible for them. They can't seem to get to the place where I can hear you, you can hear me, we can be vulnerable because we're upset about things that have happened in the past that we never resolved.
I hope y'all are taking notes because I already started taking notes. I mean, she is teaching already. So I wonder if we could do a deep dive into each of these areas. Maybe we could start with childhood trauma. Now, I know some of our couples out here, they may think they know what trauma is, but maybe you could just share a little bit about like what is childhood trauma?
Yes. Childhood trauma is anything that can lead to emotional triggers down the line. Childhood trauma can be anything from abuse, and abuse can look like a lot of things. It could be the way in which someone spoke to you to the way that people actually handle you physically. Childhood trauma could be an unstable childhood. Most people don't really consider that to be an unstable well, to be a indication of trauma, but moving around a lot, not really having finances. Childhood trauma can look like a child growing up in a home where they are neglected because parents are too busy with other children who may have disabilities or just may be more to handle, or that parent is working a lot. And so that child develops an idea about who they are, ideas about the world that may not be true based on what they have experienced as children.
That's good. Like I know that we have the kind of big scary childhood trauma that people readily think of, which may be like you mentioned, like physical abuse. But I love what you said about some of the other things that we don't readily think about, like growing up in an unstable environment. How do you see this showing up in marriage, like for people that you've worked with who have said some of these things, that like the environment was unstable, things were constantly changing?
Yeah, absolutely. My clients who really had a hard time growing up with stability or didn't have it, really either cling on to it heavily in their adulthood, right? They don't want to move. They're very vigilant about the finances. They're very concerned about where their money is going, to where the other partner is like, we have plenty of money. What's the issue? But this person has developed a mindset about, I have to keep everything because if I don't, what's the worst that's going to happen? They know the worst that's going to happen. They have an idea about it already. That's one person.
Mhm.
Then I have clients who grew up in an unstable household and think that that is normal. So they replicate it in their own life. They may not be as, big on keeping jobs or maintaining stability because they just imagine everybody grew up like this. So it's fine that my children can grow up like this. And that can cause friction in a marriage as well.
Oh, I definitely could see how that could be problematic in a relationship. So I hope that couples, y'all are having these conversations and understanding each other's like unresolved like childhood stuff, because we all have like childhood and experiences that have impacted us, that have shaped the way we think and the way we go through life. And so I just want to encourage couples to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
What do you imagine happens when they have these conversations and get a deeper understanding of what their childhood was really like?
Yes. Oh my gosh. It is so beautiful to watch a couple kind of go back into their deep memories about things that they've forgotten about or never even thought to mention when I'm asking these questions, when I'm facilitating a dialogue between two people who absolutely adore and love each other but are having a hard time. But different things grow. One is self awareness. Once I'm asking certain questions about your childhood and how you grew up and what you experienced, people start to understand, dang, that's why I am the way that I am. I had a client today literally that said, I've never thought about this, Kenyatta. That's never come to mind for me. That's exactly why I am the way that I am now that I'm listening to you ask me these questions. And this was session number two.
Wow. Like, and I think that's so powerful just to think about that you could be going through life for decades, for 20, 30 years going through life and never really having a space to unpack like this is how my childhood impacts me. This is how my anxiety shows up. And as a result of a couple making a decision to say, I'm going to invest in myself by doing therapy in 2 sessions. In session two, they get a mind-blowing like revelation of how their communication issues are being impacted by their childhood.
Absolutely. One of my clients calls them aha moments, where it's like, I didn't even think of that, but now that you brought it up, it made sense to me. It's like connecting dots. So that's one part about it is the great self-awareness that you gain by really someone digging into you and wanting to know these things just because, right? I'm here for you. So these questions that I'm asking are for me to get to know you better. And then another thing that opens up for couples that are, working together in this process is they have a better understanding of who this person is, where they come from, what their triggers are. Once
Wow. So I imagine that with that new self-awareness, both of the of themselves, but also of their spouse, then now they're not as triggered, right? Like, so it's not like you are attacking me, but it's no, my trauma is showing up. And when it shows up, this is what it looks like.
exactly. A lot of people don't necessarily understand or recognize that those experiences, those traumatic events that have happened, big or small, are contributing to how they show up. That's why for me it's super important that I provide trauma informed services. I help them to understand this is what happened. This can be why you're feeling anxious or why you may experience depression or why you may run away from conflict because you may be emotionally triggered, and rightfully so. This is not nothing to judge you about, but it's important that you know so that you can navigate better and talk about your boundaries.
It sounds like you're doing really great work to be able to like facilitate these conversations. Some of these conversations people have never had before. And so they're getting these aha, is that what you call aha moments now? And they're being able to connect the dots in such a like pivotal way. Let's go to the second one. So just a reset, guys. We're talking about what couples really mean when they say we can't communicate. So I think number two is poor listening skills. Can you talk a little bit about what that involves?
Yes. So I don't know if you've heard it before, but I heard it all my life. You have two ears and one mouth for a reason. Listening is a critical part of communicating with anyone. And the thing about what I'm finding that a lot of couples are struggling with is reflective listening and active listening. A lot of times
Mm.
couples don't even know what that really means or what it is, right? So active listening is when you are truly dialed in to what that person is saying without any judgment, but just an idea and a yearning to understand them better. I teach
I
couples.
love that. I love that because I think it's something so healing about having your experience be validated. And I know sometimes like couples may feel like, "Oh, I'm a great communicator because they can say what they think." But I love what you mentioned. It's not just about you sharing what you think, but it's also, am I hearing what my spouse is saying, right?
Exactly. A lot of times, someone will call and say, "Oh, we can't communicate because my partner, does XYZ, but I can communicate my thoughts and my feelings." But they get into session and we realize, yeah, you can communicate, you can say what you need and what you want. You got that down pack, A plus. But if I ask you what they just said, if I ask you to reflect what your husband just mentioned, you go into what you think and what you believe and what you interpreted them to say rather than what they said at face value.
Why do we do that? Like, why do like couples not listen? Like, you're talking about reflective listening, active listening. Like, why don't we listen?
Um, a couple things can be going on. We can be so invested in getting our point across that the other person's point of view may not be as important because we may feel neglected. We may be feeling like we're not being heard, and so we don't necessarily we're not putting as much priority on their thoughts and feelings because ours matter more. We're naturally that way as humans. We have to work on being a lot more altruistic and selfless and understanding of the other person before ourselves. So this is a natural response. I let my clients know it's a skill to be able to listen to the person more than you may listen to yourself and put those thoughts and feelings that you may have to the side because they will eventually be addressed, but we're not going to get anywhere if nobody feels heard.
Yes. It's hard to even get the car out the station if we're not listening. And I love what you said about this is a skill because I imagine that there are some couples that are listening that are just feeling stuck or feeling like there's no way out, but actually it is a skill that can be taught, right?
This can be developed over time. This is something that can be mastered. I tell my couples all the time communication is like a muscle. That's a thing that you work over time to develop and to get strong. So you're not going to get it right the first time. None of us are, right? I don't know anybody who just came out the gate absolutely knowing everything that they needed to know about communication. It's something that you can continue to improve. So, and then another thing I would say about why people have a hard time listening to their partner it's because sometimes our partners say things that enact and invoke emotion in us.
Ooh, say more about that. Like what when you said sometimes your partner may do things to evoke emotion. I imagine that emotion is not joy all the time. So could you talk a little bit more about what you mean there?
Yes, absolutely. So, like you said, it's not always joy and happiness and sexiness. It's not always that. Sometimes it is anger, sometimes it is frustration, sometimes it makes us feel insecure. Our partner may be saying things that literally feel like chalk on a chalkboard, like it literally hurts our ears. Oftentimes it's when they're giving us feedback, which we may see as criticism or attack. Sometimes they may be expressing what they're needing, and we're like, why do you need that? I don't need that, so you shouldn't need it. So there's judgment there. Our partners may be literally saying things that for us lead us to feel emotions that make us feel bad about ourselves. And as a result, we may deflect or defend what it is that they may be saying because we want to get out of that hole or that place of feeling bad about ourselves, which is a natural response.
Oh, that is good. Like these are things that I imagine like if our couples that are on the summit, they really like take in like these are the areas that get me stuck or get me tripped up. Like if they can really take hold of that, like I imagine that can really transform their whole marriage.
Absolutely. This is like a toolbox, right? Going to therapy and even attending something like this opens up the door for you to think about you and think about what you may be experiencing. A lot of times when I'm talking to my couples, they drag their partner along to counseling and say, fix them, and then the marriage will be fixed.
Not realizing that it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my brother, not my sister, but me. How do you like how do you help people to see that it is them? Because I think sometimes it's hard to like take that feedback of like, okay, it's not the other person, but I need to change some things in myself. Like, how do couples get to that point of seeing themselves?
Well, I would say it first starts with trust, right? This relationship. So when I bring clients in and we work together, I help them to understand that your breakthrough matters to me. Even when you have days where you don't believe that this marriage is going to work, that you're not going to resolve these issues, that you're going to stay stuck, I am here in the background reminding you absolutely not. That's not the case. We're going to figure this out. So we build a bond at that point. We build some trust. And then from there, I help them to understand that there's no judgment with it being you. And everywhere else in your life, somebody may be pointing the finger telling you that you're wrong and it feels bad. But in this space, you being wrong is a human experience. And the more that you know, the better you can do to transform and adjust those things. So that's why we start all the way from childhood to understand why you started this and how we got here. And then from there, what you want to create later on.
I love it. It just kind of makes me feel warm inside just thinking about like therapy, like the fact that there is a space that people can have not to feel like they have a problem or that they are unfixable, but that there's a space to feel like I'm not in it by myself. Like I don't have to navigate these traumatic waters or these tough conversations by myself. I imagine like that's what couples feel when they come into therapy with you, like they're not alone.
They have someone who's literally there invested in the same way that they are to figure this thing out and to get to breakthroughs, get to some level of transformation, get some relief. A lot of the couples that I'm working with, and even a lot of the couples who may be watching this, are suffering. It's impacting your health, it's impacting your mental health, it's impacting how you're showing up at work, it's impacting your relationship with your kids because things are not how you envision them to be. Nobody got married or got into a relationship for it to feel bad. And yeah, it won't be always sunshine and romance and rose petals every day, but there should be a level of we're able to function well. We can resolve conflict well. And a lot of times these dysfunction and the way in which we're operating our relationships begin to feel like it's normal because it's surrounding everybody. Everybody's going through this. But there's another way of living, and I help couples to understand however you're doing things is your business. But if you want some change, I'm your girl.
I love it. I love it. I think that I guess what I'm hearing is that conflict is not it's a part of it, right? Like if you're in marriage, if you're in a relationship, like there are gonna be times where there's conflict. It's not gonna be rainbows and butterflies all the time, but as a result of like couples really taking into account the things that you're sharing with them now, they're able to resolve it much easier, much quicker, and not get stuck in these cycles of conflict. Is that right?
Absolutely. That is the full effect of what this process looks like. Again, like you mentioned, conflict is inevitable. It's even good sometimes for you to help yourself understand who it is that you have tied your life to and what they think in their mindset about it. But in this process, you will learn to be less judgmental of that person. You will learn to not place blame or blame them for the things that are happening in your life or that are going wrong in the marriage, but there's a way in which you can communicate this feedback and ultimately get what you want, right? Another big transformation that I would say that I help couples to get to is you may ask a couple, what do you want to accomplish out of your relationship? What do you want out of your marriage? And they begin to tell you everything they absolutely do not want. I'm tired of this. I'm sick of living like this. This is happening. This is happening. For me, a big part of my work is mindset of I ask you what you
Mm.
want. Make me a list of what you want. Sometimes people can't even tap into the fantasy because they don't believe it's real. There's a block there of what's happening.
Mm.
All they see is their reality. They can't see anything else that's gonna happen. So for me, a lot of the things that I'm doing is helping people to understand that you can create a world that you want, through work. It's going to take work, it's going to take commitment, it's going to take you taking responsibility for your role, but it is possible.
I hope y'all are taking notes. Take responsibility for your role. Like it's not all your spouse, your spouse, your spouse. If he would just, if she would just, but it's like, okay, what's my part in this? And then the other thing that you mentioned that I thought was so significant is you help couples instill, like you instill hope in them, hope that it is possible to experience something new, something different. Is that right?
Absolutely. There is a world where things don't have to feel like this for you. You do not have to be waking up, going to sleep, upset day in and day out, stressed about what's going on in your relationship. There is another world where things could feel like, you know what, things are much better now that we have gone to therapy, or now that we've gotten some of these tools down, or now that we are living differently. We've all tried to make a lifestyle change, whether it was our food, whether it was our fitness, whether we tried to let go of a bad habit. It is the same thing in your relationship. It is a lifestyle change. The way in which you respond to your partner, open up to them, your vulnerability, your ability to give them feedback. All of those things are skills that are taught and mastered and practiced over time.
That's good. And when I think about like mental health and I think about like therapy, it's almost like if I have a heart problem, I'm gonna see a cardiologist. And I think like mental health and relationship issues are the same way. Like go see someone that can help you navigate it. Just like the same way you said, like when it comes to like the New Year's resolution, we all make those New Year's resolutions. I'm gonna eat more healthy. I'm gonna work out every day, but people are probably more likely to achieve those goals when they have a coach, when they have a personal trainer, when they see a nutritionist. And I imagine it's the same way when it comes to relationship work.
Absolutely. I'm literally holding your hand week after week to make sure that this homework that I have assigned, I give homework, you've done. The argument that you have, we're breaking it down piece by piece to figure out what happened in a safe space, because you're emotionally distant from it. You're not still upset necessarily. So now we can really talk about what you did, what happened, how we can resolve this. You have someone who's literally on your side, who's not necessarily invested in the same way because it's y'all's relationship, but I'm invested in seeing you guys improve it, you know?
And I guess that's the difference between like talking to your friend or your homegirl and seeing an objective third party. So I'm just mindful of the time. Let's go to the third one. So unresolved resentment. So guys, we're talking about what couples really mean when they say we can't communicate. How does unresolved resentment show up? What does that
Wow,
look like?
this is the biggest, baddest one. Once couples get here, communication can feel like next to impossible because there's so much baggage. There may be difficulty understanding the other person, difficulty trusting, right? A lot of times when we think about trust being broken, we may think of big things like infidelity, which is true. That's a way in which of betrayal. But resentment over time and things not being resolved can also bring a level of mistrust and resentment and a feeling of betrayal if things are not adjusted or corrected or resolved or even apologized for. We all have been there where we feel like, you know what, this person is not on my side. And so why would you want to talk to them? Why would you want to open up to them? And then the last
Mm,
that I will find that a lot of couples struggle with is passive aggressive behavior, where we got the
that's
side
the big one.
we got the silent treatment. I haven't talked to you for 3 days. We got shady remarks. We got the I'm gonna get back at you because you made me feel low, so I'm gonna make you feel low by saying certain things. We have things where I'm not gonna say anything to you. I'm not gonna confront you, but I'm gonna treat you a certain way. Some of my couples are truly living like this day in and day out. And we've all been there before where we are not feeling somebody. And so as a result, our behavior shows it.
That is so real. So the passive aggressiveness, why do we do that? Like why do couples instead of saying like, you did this and this hurt me, like why is there like more of a tendency to go towards the passive aggressiveness for a couple out there who maybe their partner tends to be like passive aggressive? Like maybe we could help them understand why do they do that?
Yeah. Um, It could be a couple things. Definitely, I would think about their childhood and how they experienced conflict growing up. Some people experience so much conflict in their childhood that they are conflict avoidant. Like that's the last thing that they want to do. But they feel emotions and feelings and thoughts and all of those things do not just disappear because you don't address them. So they don't have any way of communicating about it. They may not have the tools to communicate about it, but it shows out through their behaviors and actions because where does it go? It's like anything. If you suppress it, it doesn't mean that it goes away or it disappears or it resolves itself. It just shows up somewhere else. So that's one thing. Another thing I would say is it's become the way in which they operate their relationship. They may feel like if I address this with my partner, it's not going to go anywhere anyway. And they may be right. That may be
Right. Maybe some truth to that.
There's some truth to that. Before they came to counseling, every time they addressed something with their partner was defensive, dismissive, walked away from the conflict, put it back on them. So they deflected. Those are the 3 Ds: defensive, deflective, dismissive. That's not going to
Write
get
those down, y'all. Write them down.
stuff if you're doing them. But yes, so they have a whole timeline and a history of what has happened in this relationship. So they've decided that it's not going to work anyway. So I'm just going to hurt you with the silent treatment. I'm just not going to say anything to you. And that way I'm going to protect myself, protect this, and avoid conflict by doing these behaviors. It's a natural
And it's
response.
not effective, right? The unresolved resentment showing up as passive aggressiveness, like the issue doesn't just go away.
If anything, it festers and gets bigger and bigger. I had one couple where I helped them to understand your relationship. Unfortunately, it's a beautiful pile of trash. It's beautiful things in there that we got to sort through and polish off and make beautiful. But it's a lot of trash in there that we got to sort through and work through because there's been years of sweeping things underneath the rug because we got big
Mm.
fish to fry. We got kids, we got bills, we got this house, we got this move, we got all these other things. But our relationship is a plant that's dying because we haven't done anything to address these big concerns. Then they bring it all to me 20 years later, and here I am, ready to work through that trash with you.
I think that is so powerful to know that like you don't have to live in a trash can. Like you can release some of this beautiful trash and you could get help on how to release it because sometimes you may know that it's a beautiful trash but not know what to do with it, right?
The first step to letting go of resentment is tough for a lot of couples. So I take my couples through like a 10-step process of letting these things go. But again, it starts with the mind of like, do you want to feel these things and carry these things into the next year? 9 times out of 10, they tell me no. First thing is you deciding I don't want to carry this anymore. So then that desire and that motivation increases because you've made a vow to yourself. Next year I won't be feeling this way.
I think that's so significant what you said about the power of a decision, the power of deciding, no, I'm not going to live this way. I'm getting rid of this trash and I'm going to call Miss Wheeler to help me get rid of some of this trash, right?
The decision to go to counseling is one of the most powerful decisions that you will make because at that point you decided the way in which I'm doing things is not working. And for me, you got to have like some self-esteem for you to be able to say that. A lot of times people won't get help because they don't even want to address the fact that what they're doing might not be working. So I respect the people who make the decision to make that call and say, man, I can't figure this out. I've been trying, and now I need some help. A lot of people may say that's weakness, but it's strength for you to say, I'm going to do what I can because I don't want to live like this. I don't want my children to see my marriage this way. I don't want my children growing up seeing that thinking that this is right. Because later on, 20 years down the line, they're going to be telling a therapist what they saw growing up. And you want them to have a decent story about what love looked like in their household.
Oh, that is so real. Because I imagine to see that I have a challenge, and because I did not deal with that challenge, now I have passed that trauma, that unresolved resentment, that poor listening skills. I've passed it on to my child, and now I'm seeing my adult child exhibit some of the same behaviors that I did not face when I was in position to deal with it.
Have an opportunity. You have an opportunity. This is the first step. Hopping on, watching this, hearing us kind of talk about these things, making some notes. So, yeah.
Well, I just want to congratulate all of the couples who made the decision to start this process of signing up for the Better Together Summit, of hearing like what really it means to not feel like you can communicate and why couples feel like they can't communicate. So thank you so much for coming in like gangbusters and sharing with the couples some of the things that are really keeping couples stuck. Any parting piece of guidance, if all the couples in the world was listening, what parting piece of guidance would you give to them as we prepare to close?
I would say to couples, you are not your past. Your childhood trauma does not have to absolutely define who you are. Just because you have poor listening skills now does not mean that you have to live with them forever. You can learn how to listen to your mate. And lastly, we all develop some level of feelings or maybe bitterness or even resentment towards someone who has hurt us. But your partner is not the problem. The problem is the problem, and get some help to solve it.
That is so good. The problem is not the problem. The problem is the problem. Not my spouse, not if he would just, not if she would just, but let's just focus our attention on solving the problem and not attacking each other. That was really like, I want y'all to take note of that, and not just take note of it, but also implement some changes. And if you need help on how to implement those changes, Kiana, maybe you could talk a little bit to the couple who is on the fence, the couple who they are, when you go down the list: childhood trauma, poor listening skills, unresolved resentment, they're like, yes, I'm that. Yes, I know my spouse struggles with that, but they're on the fence about making a decision to get some additional support. What would you say to them, and what do they get when they get you? For couples who are like, well, I don't really understand this process, I don't really know what this is all about, can this really help me? Can you share a little bit about like what they can expect?
Yeah. Um, First of all, you get me, and I would say for me, I'm a very, very non-judgmental person as it relates to this process. I'm going to walk you through piece by piece, day by day, what these things are that you need to do, or that I would suggest that can really make a big transformation in your relationship. At this point, the list is long of the couples that I've helped. I think at this point it's over 100. I was kind of adding up
Wow.
of the couples who just have come through and their relationship looks completely different. They came through premarital counseling, they came to counseling, and now their relationship looks completely different. I've had couples who started off as dating and they didn't know if they were going to make it, and now they're married, 2 kids.
Wow.
I hit them up and they're like, Keanu, things are going great. We're on our second baby. So at this point, you get someone that is invested in every step of your life. I understand that couples go through transitions, having children, moving to a new city, someone losing a job, grief, loss. All of these things can contribute to how you communicate with your mate. And communication is the bedrock of any relationship. And so what you get when you invest in this process is not only do you learn how to invest with your partner, but everyone around you gets elevated as a result of you learning these skills. Your children, your friends and your family, the people that you work with. If you're a business owner, absolutely, my entrepreneurs out there, learning how to communicate is everything when it comes to your.
Mm.
So you don't just get the skills that you learn day to day in counseling. You get something that you can use for a lifetime. When my couples sign up with me, I tell them get a notebook because we're going to be writing some things down. Guess what? They have those notebooks later on to figure out, oh, me and my mate are going through a rough patch. What's some stuff that Kenyatta suggested that we should do? Maybe we should do these things. So you get a lifetime investment just by investing 6 months to a year in counseling.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about like they can make a decision to invest 6 months to a year, and then their whole life changes. How you feel each day has changed. How you walk through your world, your life, your work has changed now. So, guys, I want to invite you to make a decision to invest in yourself today and in your marriage today by going to AtlantaCoupleTherapy.com. You can book an appointment right there on the website with Kenyatta. She is phenomenal. I mean, when she says she is non-judgmental, trust me, she is non-judgmental. Your girlfriends, the people that you talk to, they may be judging you when you share some things, but when you work with Kenyatta, you are in a non-judgmental, safe space where you are guided through your healing process. So go to AtlantaCoupleTherapy.com, or you can also call 404 496-8070 to book your session today. Kenyatta, thank you so much for all of this rich information. Couples, y'all need to hear this again. Hearing it one time is not enough because I got a whole page full of notes. So you need to hear this again. Your spouse needs to hear this again. And 6 months from now, you probably gonna need to listen to it again. So make sure you get the replay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And don't forget, Kenyatta will be live at 12 o'clock. Make sure you check your email and join us for the Zoom link. It'll be at 12 o'clock so you can get your live Q&A session with Kenyatta.